welcome back to the Flaky Foodie podcast. I'm Jess, and today we have with us Pete. He's from the Middle Class Film Class podcast. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about that? And welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. The Middle Class Film Class we're a weekly news and review and recommendation show. We do two shows a week. We used to do one really long show, and there's essentially the first half is release on Mondays, and we talk about the weekly news, things that are happening in the news, and fun stuff, crazy stuff, the obvious things, and then the second half of that episode, we do streaming recommendations, streaming picks. So if you got all the big stuff, Hulu and Amazon Prime and Netflix, we all watch stuff throughout the week, recommend what's good, what's to stay away from. And the three of us, we record it live like it's a radio show. So there was really no editing. There's really nothing that's off topic. And we, have live sound intros and segments and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like listening to a radio show because I really like old school morning shows. That's kind of what we modeled it after. And then the second episode a week is one deep dive review, and that's just movies that we're really into, or we have a fan suggestions, and we all do it randomly from a spinning wheel. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I didn't realize that you guys were doing 100% live as I listened to a few episodes. So that's dope. I'm just thinking about the juggling that would take. So I'm just like, wow, that's really cool. And you're also into food. So tell me a little bit more about how you enjoy food in movies.
Well, food's an interesting thing. Food is like, there's a reason why there's multiple full-time food networks on television.
Yes.
It transcends every culture. You have to eat it. Obviously, you have to eat it to survive. So why not enjoy it? And I've always had a really strong relationship with food. My mother tells me I have to take her at her word because I don't remember this, but she's told me my first thing I ever said, more than just a fleeting word here and there, was "Give me more food." I was sitting in my high chair. Give me more food. I want more food. I'm so hungry. And that was just me as a child. I was my mom called me the bottomless Pete, and I could just
Very
eat
clever.
and eat and eat and eat. And I used to be a little more picky when I was a child, and now I've as I've grown older, I forced myself to get out of my bubble and stop being, picky and, oh, this isn't sweet. I can't have this.
Mhm.
And now I'll eat just about anything, and I'll try anything twice. The one thing, like for example, uni sea urchin in sushi,
Mhm.
I've tried it twice, never the third time. It's not for me. I'll wait a decade before I try it again. But in movies, I have a really strong emotional connection with film, mainly because it's like you can revisit a movie 100 times and it's the same every time, and you get this endorphin rush. Maybe not always endorphins, but sometimes sadness, sometimes fear. With
Mhm.
scary movies, but there's really something that hits on a really visceral level for me when you see amazing food portrayed in film, and then watch the people consume it, because it's almost like I'm eating the food, except for
Yeah.
I'm not gaining the weight from
Or to
it.
make you at the end, you're just like, okay, I have to go get this
Oh yeah,
and have this experience for myself.
one of the scenes that we're going to talk about today, I've made that sandwich many times in my life.
Mhm.
Modeled that my sandwich after that one sandwich. So
Okay, so we'll get into it because I definitely have a question regarding
sure,
that.
okay.
Yeah, sure. So let's start on this list of awesome food scenes in movies
Mhm.
or food movies, because some of these movies are centered around being in the kitchen or being a cook
Mhm.
or being a chef, which I thought was really interesting. So what is the number one? Because I'm not sure the order on the
Yeah,
list.
I haven't really ordered these per
Okay.
se. I'll think of just off the top. I'll just pick probably my lowest impactful one.
Okay.
So this is from the movie Spanglish,
Mm,
starring Adam Sandler. One of his serious roles that people kind of reference. He plays a funny enough character, but he definitely is it's a straight man in that.
I
And
actually
his
love that movie. So
it's great.
yes.
Yeah, Penelope Cruz, I believe.
Yes.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I rewatched all of these specific scenes for this show, and there is a one specific scene. He plays a chef, in the movie. It's not really talked about a ton. You don't see him cooking a ton. At least I believe he plays a chef. If not, he's just really likes food because he makes this sandwich that's it's some sort of meat. I'm not sure if it's like a roasted chicken or if it's a steak sandwich, but it's a big cut of meat. They don't really linger on it,
Mhm.
and it's on a nice sourdough, like wide slice sourdough bread, and he toasts some cheese on it in the toaster oven, and then once he assembles it all together, he fries a nice fried egg and puts it on top, cuts it in half, and he's getting ready to take a bite, and he says, "Oh baby," and then the chaos, and that's his respite from the family madness that's happening in the house, and then right as he's getting ready to take his first bite, the madness comes in, and everyone's, "Ah, ka, 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 we need to talk to you, dad," da,
Yeah.
da, da. And that's very relatable.
Yeah.
when so I saw that when the movie first came out. I saw it not in theaters, but right when it released to DVD as a rental, and that sandwich looks so good. And
Yeah, he took such loving care in making it. You can tell that, I'm about to savor this. And he's taking this, like, oh, I'm about to eat this before he's rudely interrupted.
yeah,
But yeah.
food can be an escape in a lot of ways. Sometimes an unhealthy escape, but a lot of times it's just you have a favorite food, and it
Hmm.
doesn't matter what's happening through the day. When you take a bite of it, it's just a way to just stop. And I don't know how many times you've stopped on like a lunch break for work, and you take a bite of something. Maybe you go home and
Hmm.
have some leftovers or bring leftovers to work or something, and it's whatever it is, it just hits the spot, and you just go, and it's like the day melts away for that moment.
For
And you
mine,
could
it's a warm chocolate chip cookie.
really,
Instant escape.
oh, I love it. Do you have a special recipe for your chocolate chip cookies?
I do. It's actually the one from Sally's Baking Addiction.
Hmm.
.com. Her recipe adds a little bit of cornstarch into the dough.
Hmm.
And what that does, it makes them last longer because if you make the Nestle Toll House, they're good that day, but the
Yeah.
next day they don't taste as great. They get a little stale.
Hmm.
These stay soft and chewy. And I think it's cornstarch that makes the difference. Dark brown sugar makes a difference, and
Hmm.
leaving your dough to rest in the fridge for at least a day or two. It really,
Really?
yes, it really
Oh wow.
develops a depth of flavor, and you also prevent cookie spread, which makes good fat cookies, which are
Yeah.
ideal.
So good. So if you don't let them rest in the fridge, they will kind of smush out and make the wide,
Yes,
thin cookies.
they will spread. Yeah, you will get those
Hmm.
thin, crispy cookies. So
I had a
let
friend
your
who
dough
put
rest.
I, I had a friend who put vanilla Jello pudding mix in her cookies, chocolate chip
that
cookie mix.
that does.
I've never done a side by
Mhm.
side comparison, but they were good.
Yeah. I think I can't remember what recipe I use the pudding in for cookies. There are certain type. They're like a whole series where you use different pudding flavors. Everybody has like their own spin
Hmm,
online on food blogs and things
that's
like
nice.
that. Yeah. So I think I made like a strawberry cheesecake cookie once before.
All
I
right.
experimented with everything. So
Now you're speaking my language. so
yeah.
So that rewatching all the scenes for this show, that's the one that I've copied that sandwich many times. Tried different variations on different meats and whatnot and cheeses, but that's what that was the movie that broke out frying an egg on a sandwich for me. Never really thought to do that before, and I
Mm.
saw that and I'm like, that's a great idea. I love runny eggs, and now I make almost every time I make a burger at home, I'll fry an egg and put it on top.
I'm the exact opposite, but I have a very unpopular opinion on eggs.
Yeah,
I cook
you
them to
hate them
death.
on. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
That's how my girlfriend likes it. So
yeah.
I'll cook them that way for her.
Oh, very nice of you to do so because some people are very, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. So that's very
Yeah.
nice.
Did you did you remember? Do you know what scene I was talking about when I sent you that list for the oh baby sandwich?
You know what? I didn't really remember it, but as soon as I watched it, I was like, I remember that because I was
Hmm.
just thinking like, I want a sandwich. It didn't make me want that
Yep.
specific sandwich, but I was
Yeah.
just like, you know what would be really nice right now? A sandwich.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's very cool.
all right. Let's see. What's next? I'd say that the next one is a little bit more fun. It's a
Mhm.
little less realistic. This is from my childhood. This is from Steven Spielberg's Peter Pan version rendition, Hook.
Yes.
and this is the imaginary dinner. Um, you've seen Hook?
I've seen it like once. I didn't
Okay.
watch it a whole lot growing up, but yes.
Only as an adult have I found out that people say that Hook is not a good movie, and I'm just like infuriated by that because it's so instrumental in my childhood, and I've been called Peter Pan my whole life, so it's there's a lot of maybe there's some repressed anger there that goes along with it and retribution, but it's oh gosh, Julia Roberts plays Tinkerbell.
Mhm.
I'm completely having a brain fart on Peter Pan. He's Robin Williams. That's it. I
Oh
don't know why
yeah,
I couldn't
yeah,
think of that. Yeah, the best, the greatest,
yeah.
and and Dustin Hoffman as the hook, as the titular Hook.
Hmm.
So Peter Pan loses. He's an adult. He doesn't believe he's Peter Pan. He thinks he's Peter Panning, and he
Hmm.
goes back to Neverland. And he's with the Lost Boys. We're all boys still, and he's this tax accountant, and he's sitting there, and they're all pretending to eat this dinner, and it's just a bowl full of empty steam.
Mm.
And he can't wrap his mind around it. He's like, "What are you guys doing? What are you eating?" And the catalyst to him beginning to believe, which is the whole theme of the whole movie and the theme of Peter Pan, you have to believe, is that he gets an insult battle with the new leader of the Lost Boys, Rufio, played by Dante Basco.
Yeah.
And he
Some
they
Shakespearean insults there.
oh yeah, it's great. You're a lewd, crude bag of old chewed food, dude. I remember that like from my childhood, burned in my head. And he the insult battle culminates with the Lost Boys finally being excited that Peter Pan's here, and he scoops up a bowl of air with a spoon and flings it at Rufio, and Rufio gets hit in the face with this creamy blue and red sludge.
Yes.
And then he takes one look again, and you have what Steven Spielberg is great for is just this wonderfully lit, whimsical dinner of some of it's real food, like there's like a roast duck or roast chickens and things there, but then a lot of it's just giant bowls of like colored whipped cream,
Hmm. And
and this,
different color puddings and things. Yeah.
yeah, and it's so fun, and it looked so appetizing as a child. Maybe
Hmm.
not so much as an adult now. I'm like, man, I get heartburn from that.
But I mean, it's no space left on the table. All the dishes are super close together. All you see on the table pretty much is food. And something that was interesting in the comments was that when he starts to believe, you see like a blue light on the spoon before he flicks it. And
Oh,
so it
interesting.
was like a interesting kind of lighting choice there, which I thought was interesting.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that specifically for that because I've I've tackled a lot of old Spielberg stuff for the show for our show, and one of them was E.T. It was a movie that scared the hell out of me as a child, and I revisited it to overcome my fear on the show, and it was really fun too because I called my mom on air, and I told her how traumatized I was about it, and she had no idea. Um, but in ET, there's a number of scenes where they're in the house and the lights coming in through the window, and you can see the sun rays coming in, and it's like it seems like real life. It doesn't seem like a movie in a
Mhm.
lot of Spielberg stuff, and he really has a way of with light. So that's really interesting. You said that. Um, the other thing that I love about that scene in Hook is the camaraderie that's
Mhm.
tied to the meal, and that's something that some people never, maybe never, but every once in a blue moon will have those like large scale meals with friends and family, and
Mhm.
it's something special. It's do you eat in large groups often?
Yeah, around holidays, I have a really big family since pandemic happened, or the great panini, as I like to call it. Um, as, as it happened, we've done that less, but yeah, definitely big food. But it's interesting that it's never been around like this huge table.
Mhm.
Everyone kind of goes to, because it's usually like a smaller house, so everybody kind of goes to their own little corners. You have your kind of
Mm,
cliques of cousins, and you all kind of
yeah,
sit around together and eat. Together but separately, or it'll be like in a room, but we're at one group is at this little table, another one's at this little table, and so you have jokes kind of being hollered from table to table,
yeah.
and it's
What are you guys laughing at
and
over there?
yeah.
I want to hear that joke.
You have my aunts and uncles, and they're telling some stories because we grew up. Grew up in Quincy, Florida, which is a very small town near Tallahassee,
Mhm.
and so they're telling tales of. My favorite one is the Great Bird Feast that they
Mhm.
had one time when they were kids. Kids being kids, they were just, and at that time they just kind of let you loose to roam outside.
Yeah.
And so, they had these birds that they all kind of just shot up, random birds, cleaned
Mhm.
them,
Oh, really?
cooked them, and ate them. And so, I can't tell the story as well as my aunts and uncles, but it's just things like that.
Oh, that's
I
great.
definitely get that camaraderie feel was very interesting to see. And it kind of reminds me of the movie Soul Food, which, to be honest, I haven't really seen in its
Mhm.
entirety, but I remember all the scenes around the table from like compilations and things like that.
Mhm.
And it's just people kind of sit around the table, and the food is kind of the backdrop of the entire story, them sitting around eating soul food. So
Ooh, that's interesting. I haven't seen that before.
yeah.
Is what? How long ago did that come out? Is that a newer
Oh,
one?
that was a 90s
Oh,
90s
90s.
movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check that out. I like 90s and the 2000s are like my sweet spot.
Yeah.
There was only later in life. I mean, as a kid, you don't really. I mean, you get that in like the lunchroom, cafeteria, and stuff like that, but
Mm,
it's not the same. You're there for a mission, eat and go back to school.
yeah.
But the one time I've experienced that outside of my household, we had it was a work function, and I was selling alarms door to door. Terrible job. It was
Oh,
hard work.
yeah.
Sucks
Door to
all
door
day.
anything is
I
brutal,
know.
man.
It was, I mean, yeah, it was, our goal was to sell one house per day, and you would be 350, 500 doors you'd knock on, and you get one yes and the rest are no's. It's crippling to your to your um psyche.
Mm,
So the end of the season, and you don't see any of your coworkers because you're in this side of town and they're in that side of town, so you're literally by yourself the entire time. And at the end of this season, our boss had took us to. I'm in Northern California near Sacramento, and we were selling in Sacramento, but we drove to San Francisco. It was about a 2 hour drive, and we went to this Italian restaurant called Steps of Rome in North Beach, San Francisco, and it's traditional Italian food, and it's traditionally set like they do in Italy, where the dinner service runs until about midnight, maybe 1 in the morning, and we were there until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and there was probably 25 or 30 guys there, everyone who wanted to come. And after I left that dinner, I felt like they were like my best friends. It was
mm,
so great, and we
that's
sharing off each
awesome.
other's plates.
Yeah.
We did not we ordered, instead of just ordering dessert individually, we just ordered one of every dessert and pulled it down the center of the table, and we all would just eat off the plates. And man, I felt like I was a Peter Pan with the Lost Boys, except for I was the kid.
That is dope. But I think it's interesting too how that feast it looks so good to a kid, but as an adult, you just like you can see the work that the production team, just like they just colored some pudding and put it on the
Yeah,
table. But as a kid, you're just like, man, I want a scoop of that green stuff and blue stuff, and it's
that's
so
right.
many different colors on the table as well. And this scene kind of reminded me of how that scene in Matilda with the chocolate cake.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
iconic. To where
That
even
made a
though the
lot.
lady brought out the cake, licked her arms, and said her sweat and blood went into it, you're still like, man, I could really use. And he was force fed this cake as well. You're still just like, I want a slice of it, which is really interesting.
When I was looking through like food lists to make sure I didn't miss any obvious ones for this list, I saw the chocolate cake scene came up a
Yeah.
number of times, and that one never landed on me. Just I'm not much of a chocolate cake guy,
Mhm.
but and it's been so long since I've seen that movie. But I'm also your literal blood, sweat, and tears can go into a dish, and I'll still eat it. I don't mind. I mean, you see chefs tasting their dishes as they're cooking in the back, and it's
Yeah.
like that's just you got to do it. It's okay. You're not gonna die. It's all right.
Well, yeah, you miss out on some good food spots because they always say the whole hole in the wall type places have the best food.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's see. What do we got next?
sure.
Let's do the strudel scene from Inglorious Bastards.
Now, I had never seen this before, and I love like apple pie, anything like that. So I was just like, I feel like I'm not supposed to be enjoying this scene as much as I should because there's so much tension that you feel. But I just my eye kept going back to the plate, like, man,
Mm-hmm.
that's some thick crust. I bet that's very buttery.
I know you see the money shot where she cuts into it and then you just
Yes.
see the crust explode.
Yes.
So have you seen the movie since then at all?
No, I
Okay.
haven't seen the whole movie y'all at all.
So the premise of Inglorious Bastards, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. I have a poster of it literally staring right at it, right in front of me on my wall right now. It's a fantastic movie. It's one of my favorites. It has the best opening scene of any. It's a character introduction scene for Christoph Waltz character, Hans Lander, Colonel Hans Lander, and that's Hans Lander in the Strudel scene. Well, in the opening scene of the movie, which is you could just watch that one and know what you're getting yourself into for the movie. It's a 15-minute, maybe 10-minute scene. It is a textbook class on tension, just like the Strudel scene is. And in that scene, he's in Nazi Germany. He's works for the SS, and his job is to find the Jewish families that have hidden in France so they can exterminate them. And he goes to Monsieur Lapidite's house. It's this little milk farmer in the countryside of France. And he goes in and he basically says, I need to find out where the whereabouts of your neighbors are. And it turns out that he's hiding them in the floorboards beneath his house. It's the mother, the father, and the son and two daughters. And Shoshana is the oldest daughter. And without giving away the entire scene, Shoshana is the only one that makes it out alive. And she knows exactly who Hans Lander is. She can see him through the floorboards having this conversation and this extravagant conversation. And then halfway through the movie, she sees him again as she's running a movie theater. And they're trying to secure the movie theater to show this propaganda film. And Hans Lander is head of security. So he needs to interview her because she owns the theater and will be running the projector. And as soon as he walks in the door, her heart just is racing and she knows she's trapped and she can't do anything about it. So he doesn't know what she looks like because he only saw the back of her head, and she's changed her name. So she's sitting here with the man who murdered her family while she was laying on the ground next to them. And he's a stone cold killer with no remorse. And the only respite she has in this entire scenario is that he orders a strudel for her and then forces her to wait for the cream to come to eat the cream. And then she takes one big bite of the cream with the strudel, and you get that big sigh of relief through her nose as she's chewing, because she's exactly like you said. You're like, I don't know if I should enjoy this right now, but it's so good. And it's just that one shot of her taking the bite, chewing it, and then for that moment, it feels better. And that's that delicious strudel that does that.
And there's this wonderful close-up shot of the waiters scooping out the cream, and a interesting plot point, I guess, or device is that he puts it so carefully and gently on her strudel, but he just kind of plops it down.
Oh, really? On
his, yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's great. I probably seen this movie 15 times. It's a brutal, very, very brutal movie. I mean, it's Tarantino, so you know what you're expecting. But the care that he takes to paint that scene is very, very good. And there's almost no like positivity in that entire movie. Like it's just down and down and down and down and down. But in that scene, she gets just that little waft of relief, and I like that because it's so easy to do with a delicious bite of food.
You know what was so funny to me in the comment section on that? Somebody said they took like a frozen, just regular toaster strudel apple, heated it up, added some ice cream. So basically, a very basic version of what they saw in the movie. They were like, it's awesome, and I have it every day. And so I'm just like, just that kind of a simile of what they saw in the movie was enough to kind of keep them going. And I was just like, that's awesome. They got a unique food idea from that.
If the person who wrote that comment is listening to this podcast right now, please make yourself some homemade cream, like whipped cream.
Mhm.
Heavy cream in a stand mixer, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of sugar. There's not much you need to it. It is life changing. It'll change all your desserts forever. You don't have to do ice cream because that takes it to a whole nother level. That turns into its own separate category of dessert for me.
Mhm.
But just a little dollop of homemade whipped cream.
Mm.
It's so good. The stand mixer pays for itself with the homemade cream,
Mm.
in my opinion.
Now you look, I'm making a store run because I already want some apple something after seeing that. So
I like
that's
to I
yeah.
like to squeeze some fresh blueberries into my whipped cream when I'm making it, and just make
Oh, that's
some.
such a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever berry I got and on hand, I'll just squeeze it down. I don't put the pulp and stuff in there.
Hmm.
Just squeeze it down and run it through a sieve or something, and then throw that into the bowl as it's beating it. It doesn't get as thick because the wateriness
Hmm.
kills it a little bit, but it's really good.
Ah, I
And
bet lemon zest with that too.
probably right at the end
Blueberries and
after you serve
lemon.
it. Yeah, delicious. I have
uh,
both of those downstairs.
yes, because my favorite cake to make, and probably one of my most successful, was a lemon blueberry cake. The
Mm-hmm.
recipe is from Mel's Kitchen Cafe. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's her blog title, and it's a blueberry lemon cake with cream cheese frosting.
That sounds great. That's more my speed. I'll leave the chocolate at the door. I'll take that. All right, let's see. What do we got next? Let's go with the. There's a specific scene from this movie, but the whole movie is worth it if you're a foodie. Is Jiro James of Sushi,
Mm,
and this is more of a documentary than a narrative movie, um, and it follows. I don't know his first name. His last. Well, I think his first name is Jiro. It's Jiro something, and he is known as the greatest sushi chef of all time.
mhm.
Greatest ever was, greatest ever will be. He's literally dedicated like 70 years of his life to creating good sushi. And the interesting thing about, have you seen the entire doc?
No, I haven't. So
Okay.
now I'm yeah, it's on my to watch list for sure.
It is gorgeous. Gorgeous. It's like watching art.
Hmm.
And it's the interesting thing about Jiro and his sushi is that he only has two restaurants and they only seat about 15 people each. And they're in a subway tunnel in Tokyo. They're not, there's not a whole lot of pomp and circumstance. There's waiting lists that's 6 months long to get into the restaurant. And yet it is the most simple little cuts of fish. And the scene that I sent you is this, it's called the Symphony on a Plate. And
Mm,
and Jiro talks about how each meal should be, he thinks of like a symphony, and it's you don't just give somebody a piece of fish, and you don't just give somebody 5 pieces of fish. You start with the intro that warms your senses, and you move to the mackerel because that's the weight of the meal, and
mm,
then to the fatty tuna because that has the more vibrant flavor and more thick, more substance. And he explains it as he's serving it to these patrons, and the during the scene you see it's set over some light music, like classical music, and you're just watching these like up close macro shots of him painting some unknown sauce on this fish and molding it in his hand and placing it on this little black slab. And God, it makes my
mm.
mouth water right now, and I'm not even
And
watching it.
every piece is perfect. Like
Yes,
not a grain of rice out of place. Everything's just perfect and on point.
it's but forgetting that one scene because the scene is amazing. The entire movie's like that.
Mm,
There's they talk about tamago. It's like some sort of like an egg souffle.
mm,
You don't really see it too often at sushi places. If you see it on the menu at a sushi place, it's kind of a risky purchase because it's a funky dish. It really is like whipped egg baked into a pan and then cut into squares and wrapped like sushi.
mm,
And I can't remember the full name of it, but tamago is egg, and it's like tomagiko or something. And they spend about 15 minutes of the movie talking about how his son, who is his apprentice, he doesn't let his son, after 15 years of practicing to make the tomagiko, still doesn't let him make it for the restaurant because he can't get it right. It's
Oh wow.
it's like that difficult to make in his eyes, in Jiro's eyes. So there's a very interesting family dynamic that goes along with it. He has two sons, and I believe it's two sons. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and there's the second restaurant, and one of them has to be able to run it. So there's like this jockeying back and forth, I believe, and it spends probably 20-30 minutes of the movie talking about how they choose their ingredients, interspersed throughout shots of them cooking it. So they know specifically all the fishmongers at the market. They go down there at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning to go pick the best fish, and they have the giant mackerel. And he puts his head down on the mackerel and knocks on it like he's knocking on a melon. And he goes, "Nah, this mackerel is no good.
Oh wow.
Give me another batch to knock on."
I
And
didn't
it's
know.
like,
I didn't know fish had the knock test too. Yeah.
I
That's
had no idea.
really interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, you and I would knock on a fish and go, "Yeah, that's a fish."
Accurate.
But yeah, I'd say I don't even know what kind of fish that is. But Jiro is literally spent his entire life, longer than a lot of people have been alive, start to finish, and he's still trying. He still says, I think in this clip, I think maybe it's a different one, but he says, "I'm still learning. I'll never be I'll never be perfect. There's never perfection. There's only the strive for perfection." And I feel that when I'm trying a new recipe that speaks to me. I've been spending 5 years to master my fried chicken wings, and and I feel like I'm pretty close. But every time I eat it, I'm like, okay, well, let's change it a little bit. Do you have a recipe like that? You're chasing the ultimate version.
Well, usually the recipes that I'm chasing are usually my mom's, because my mom
Ah,
she was a home ec
yes.
teacher, probably one of the best cake makers I know. So every time I made a cake, I don't really bake as much anymore, but
Mm.
whenever time I made a cake, I will always take it to her, and probably just like the son from the film, I'm like, "What do you think?" And I'm like watching her face, like she takes a bite, and I'm just like,
Please, I hope you like it. Tear,
yes.
one tear. Well, how's mom like your cakes?
Well, it's some that she likes, and she's very honest. If it's something that's not quite right, and she used to do cake demonstrations at school, so
Mm.
she basically grades the cake that I would
Mm.
bring. Like she'll just be like, "Well, you see this streak right here, you probably need to mix it a little while longer." And I'm like,
Interesting.
so
Wow. What is your mom's like? If you think of, if it's your birthday and mom's gonna make you a cake, what are you
pound cake,
secretly hoping it's with?
pound
What
cake, a
pound
chocolate
cake?
pound cake.
Chocolate pound cake. Is
Yeah.
that what kind of frosting goes on that?
I'm actually not a big frosting person.
Hey, me too. All right.
So it's usually just a plain pound cake, and people don't understand. When people say that they like frosting more than cake, I'm like, but why? Frosting is so easy to make. It's
Yeah.
just fat and sugar.
Mm-hmm.
But a cake, to get it right, to get it to where is the crumb is the way you want it, it's the perfect moistness. That's an art. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, you need to please savor the cake. Just don't scoop the frosting off, savor the cake. And
How do you feel about fudge if you're that way about frosting? Because
I don't
I
like
can't do
fudge.
I can't do fudge either.
I don't, and I always expect to like, because I'm a huge chocoholic,
Mm,
and it's always this, and it smells so good. Like if you pass a
mm,
fudge shop, it
mm.
always invites you in, and I get it, and I take one bite, and I'm just like, I don't like it. This is too cloyingly sweet, and it's too cloyingly sweet, and not kind of. I like kind of like,
Is
I love cheesecake, so I
Yeah.
like rich things, but I'm just like, it's
Is
crossing the line.
way too much. Yeah.
Yes,
The one
so.
the one chocolate cake that I crave also comes from my mom, and it's a chocolate stout cake.
Mm.
It's like boiling stout beer mixed with whatever else, and it makes this really dark cake. And then she puts a chocolate ganache frosting on it, but she
That's so
rolls it
good.
out real thin,
Yeah.
and it's just the right amount of frosting, like a little, maybe a tad bit too much, but it comes from mom, so it's perfect.
Exactly. My mom's chocolate pound cake is very kind of light on the chocolate.
Mm,
So the best way I can describe it is like a light kind of chocolate ice cream. It's so smooth the way she
mm,
makes it to us, where it's like melts on your mouth, on your palate like ice cream. And there's a little part at the bottom of the cake, and which is the top while it's baking in a bun pan,
mm,
and it gets slightly crispy. But right below that is like, I don't know what you would call it, but it's almost like it's not candy, but it'll just like instantly
mm.
melt away when you eat it. And it's like the best part of the cake. Like you really eat the cake from the top and savor this little bottom part of the cake. And
Oh,
it's
interesting.
really good. So
I love pound cake. I mean, I could just grab it at any moment and just take a bite. It's good to go
yes.
too.
Always pound cake is always a safe bet, because with layer cakes, it's a massive waste for me, because I will scoop out most of the cake
Mm,
and probably about a fourth of the icing, because I only need a little bit. But where I am now, there's this bakery called Decadent Delights. Her frosting is not that sweet, and I love her cakes. So
nice. Good deal. Well,
yes,
I
sorry,
th- I
a
think
big
no,
tangent on cake.
no, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could, I've my chicken wing journey has transitioned into the sous vide realm. So now
Oh wow, you're fancy.
yeah, I cook them all because there's two reasons why. Number one is that it's really hard to get keep them juicy and cook them all the way through. You know, chickens like that, you got to toe the line. If you cook it to the safe point, if you go just a little bit too far, it starts getting dry. And I
Mm,
think that's the key to a really good chicken wing. And if I don't have control over getting like the big ones, because you just go to the store and get the frozen wings, I'm not fancy enough to get them fresh. Um, I have to control the temperature, so I cook. Then the second reason is that you can pre-freeze bags in different sizes.
mm,
So I put like 10 pack bags and 15 pack bags in different sizes and label them, and I put them pre-pack them, pre-freeze them, just salt and pepper, a tiny bit of butter, and then vacuum seal them, and then throw them in my freezer standing up. And at any time, if I'm like, we just want an easy dinner, I'll just tell, my girlfriend works from home, so I'll tell her, hey, get the water running and throw in, 2 packs at noon, and
mm,
it'll take an hour for them to thaw, and then 2-3 hours for them to cook. And by the time I get home from work, I'm getting ready to pull them out and fry them, and they're already cooked. So we just toss them in cornstarch,
mm,
unseasoned, unflavored cornstarch, because she's gluten free, so we don't use flour,
mhm.
and do just a quick flash fry, like a 2-minute flash fry, just to get some crispiness to it. And then we usually dry season them, but we do the whole hot ones thing. We'll put the 10 levels of spiciness and then all the dry rubs. We make all our dry rubs from scratch too. And it's a good time. Chicken wing night's fun at our house.
So you have the hot ones experience.
Oh,
Find out a
yeah.
lot about each other. Do y'all do
Yeah.
the gradual lead up to the very hot one, or is it just kind of like free for all?
We kind of, yeah. When we do it with just ourselves, we know the sauces we like, so we don't make a big hurrah about it. But we have had people over. Well, we'll cook 100 wings and
Mm,
then just lay them out unseasoned, season them yourself, and here's the experience. And there's a point of no return in the hotness where you're like, this is what most people consider hot, and this is another level. So
mm.
if you don't want that, here's the delineation line. So stay away from you know what's the really bad. I got a there's a Blair's Ultra Death Sauce, I think, is the one that I have that's
Oh wow.
really, really hard. It's really hard. I mean, you one little dab of it and you're toast for 20 minutes. So I see people. I have only one friend I've ever seen will put it on an entire wing, and he
Mm.
eats it, and he's like, that's pretty hot. It's pretty good. And I'm
Very
like,
casual about it.
one dab on a tortilla chip, and I eat it, and I'm like running my head under the mouth on the tap water for 10 minutes. And he grew up eating like unbelievably hot stuff.
Mm.
He grew up with his grandparents, and his grandparents said, if you don't eat it, you don't eat. And so
Oh
he was
wow.
forced to eat and grew up in the South, lot of hot stuff.
So his stomach's made out of Kevlar by now.
Yep, yep. Shout out
Yeah.
to Paige. um,
I'm always intrigued by people who can just down something like super, like I'm talking about nuclear hot
yeah,
spicy, and just be like, oh, all right, what are we doing
that's
next?
That's Paige. I'm
Yeah,
not.
that's
I'll
very
do
cool.
it. I'll eat it, but I'm not happy about it afterwards.
Yeah, my nose is like the
Yeah.
indicator whether or not something is spicy. Have you ever had the it's by Ocean Deck, it's Rasta sauce.
Rasta
They
sauce,
have it
huh?
here at Tijuana Flats where they
Mhm.
actually have a hot sauce bar for they sell like kind of Tex-Mex food,
Okay.
and they have a hot sauce bar, and the Rasta sauce is always my go-to. It's like it's so good. It doesn't really go with what I'm eating usually, but I'm
Mhm.
just like I have to
Eat it
have some
anyways.
of this. So it's really like super flavorful. It's not too spicy. Has a lot of like allspice kind of taste to it. So
Okay.
it's really different. But it's worth a try.
Is it supposed to be like? Is it supposed to be kind of a like a Jamaican sort of, maybe a little bit of sweet?
It's not really
Doesn't taste like
sweet.
that.
It's
Okay.
not sweet. It's I think it's supposed to have kind of Caribbean inspired flavors, but
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
very hesitant to say that my husband's from the Virgin Islands.
Uh,
So he's always complaining about how they say they put out something and say it's Caribbean and they put
sure.
pineapple on it. He's like, pineapples don't grow here. So he's just like, why would you
That's
do that?
funny. That's
So
so funny. Fake.
yeah. So I'm real hesitant to put anything off on being West Indian or Caribbean without doing my due diligence.
I'm
So
I'm adding that to my list. I'm going to see if I can find Rasta sauce somewhere. I'm actually
yeah.
just going to send it to you on Twitter so I can tag that.
Yes.
All right, let's. So I think we talked about a family and how mom's cakes hit just different. I
Mhm.
think the next one we have to do has to be Ratatouille.
Yes.
It's it's the most heartwarming, emotional scene in a movie about a rat that sits on a person's head all day. It's, oh my gosh, every time I watch it, I tear up. And for those who don't know, Ratatouille is a Pixar movie, and it's essentially about a rat who does not accept the fact that he has to eat trash for the rest of his life, and he has a refined nose, and so he,
Mhm.
luckily for him, he's right near London, so he goes to London, or sorry, Paris, France. He goes to Paris, and he pairs up with a rookie chef named Linguini, and he sits on his head essentially and learns he can control him with his arms and make him make the dishes that he can't make because he's a rat. And essentially, there's a very high profile and very dour film critic named Anton Ego who loves ripping apart young chefs, and very not very nice about it.
Mhm.
And Ego gets a word of this fantastic restaurant that that Linguini is cooking for, and he comes to uh, feature him in his newspaper article. And what gets served is this dish called ratatouille.
Mhm.
And ratatouille is a peasant dish made of essentially just seasoned vegetables baked in a dish. And I've never heard of the dish before the movie.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of it or even had it?
I haven't had it surprisingly since I'm vegetarian. That sounds like it would be right up my alley.
I know.
But but I did know of it. Not it's I've heard the term before, but I didn't really know what the dish was
Yeah.
before the movie.
Yeah, it's and I didn't, same thing. I didn't either, and I'm still yet to have it. I can't imagine any place that would just serve, it's just mixed vegetables. It's pretty much
Mhm.
around here. It's all you get.
I made something similar. It's not ratatouille, but it's very similar, and it has a tomato sauce on the bottom, and you have it kind of stacked with
Mm,
slices of tomato. I can't remember the exact name. It's a similar dish, but it's some differences in it. So
well, it looks delicious, and the
yes.
movie makes it look delicious, and I don't think it's always presented in that way. It's
Mm-hmm.
sliced, cylindrical, like gourds and vegetables, things like that are round, and they slice it into discs or coins, and kind of they stack it in alternating colors in this
Mm-hmm.
nice spiral pattern, and they bake it like a pie.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes out, it looks great. And Ego is uh, this hoity-toity old man looking down his nose at this, and he's
Mm-hmm.
ready to rip it apart. And he
And
takes
he's
one
very
bite.
gray. I have to say
Yes,
that.
he is. He's wearing all black with a black scarf, and he walks in like he's ready to burn the place down. And everyone's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, it's Anton Ego! Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Anton Ego!" And he is scoffed at being served ratatouille because it's a peasant dish. When it comes out, he takes one bite of it, and you get this fantastic shot where it zooms right in on his face, and when it zooms out, it's Ego as a child
Mm-hmm.
coming into his kitchen crying because he hurt himself out playing or something, and it's cold outside, and he comes in and his mom's cooking that dish in his
Mm-hmm.
childhood kitchen, and she sets it down for him. He takes a bite and is warmed up, and the colors get brighter, and he's everything's right in the world when he takes that bite, and then it whoosh, zooms back to him sitting in the restaurant, and it's like all those emotions are like instantly invigorated in his head,
Mm-hmm.
and he just digs into the ratatouille in front of him, and it's such a heartwarming thing. It makes me almost cry every time.
Yes. And what's so interesting is that just yesterday we had strawberry shortcake at my mom's, and it was surprisingly not a homemade cake that we usually use for strawberry shortcake. It's a Sara Lee pound cake.
Mhm.
Strawberries, Cool Whip, very simple,
Yeah.
very quick. And my sister, she took a bite and she was just like, memories, because we that was always my mom's kind of go-to, like very quick something just to
Yeah.
kind of round the meal out for dessert.
Mm.
And we've had it different ways through the years, but the Sara Lee pound cake is kind of like the standard. And so
Yeah.
she took a bite and you could tell she was having a food memory.
Yeah.
And so it's just amazing how that can food can just transport you to happier days. So
Yeah, there's it's one of the most frustrating emotions is when you can't scratch that itch of something. You smell something like, where do I smell that from? Where do I know that from?
mhm,
And you just can't let it go. It's like a song that gets stuck in your head, but worse.
mhm,
And I went out for teppanyaki one time, and I
mhm,
was at the like a Benihana's type place around here, and they made fried rice on the griddle right in front of us, and cracked an egg in it, chopped up some green onions, cooked a little bacon, mixed it
mhm,
all up, served in this little bowl. And the second I took a bite, I'm like, that's it. That's Uncle John's fried rice.
mhm,
And I hadn't had it in probably 15 years. And he's my uncle married into the family. He's Japanese, and he made his parents were born in Japan. He makes a lot of traditional Japanese dishes, and that was the one that was like we'd have that all the time. It was his go-to if he was cooking dinner. You'd always have his fried rice, and I didn't know what was different about it, and it was the bacon and the green onions.
mhm.
Watching him cook it in front of me, and now I can make it at home, and I get that endorphin rush and the memory, the food memory every time I eat it now. But sitting in that restaurant was like I felt like I was Anton Ego. Oh my God, it's that memory I forgot about. Made me so happy to discover that.
There's an my favorite part, other than the ego scene, which is iconic, is the
Yeah.
fact that I can't remember the little kind of ratty guy
Oh,
that's kind of like sabotage Luigi the whole
yeah.
time. I can't remember his name in the
He
film.
used to be the head chef before in Linguini.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he takes a bite and you can tell he's fighting to not like it.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great shot.
He's
He's like,
like,
oh,
he takes a bite, he's like, at the same time.
I hate that I love this.
Yes.
He's my enemy. And then the reveal to that is that he's like, "Who cook this? I need to go in the kitchen." And he runs in the kitchen. He sees all the rats in the kitchen.
Yes, I'm so surprised that movie made me root for a rat
I
chef
know.
and a kitchen full of rats.
Well done, Pixar. um, yeah, that's I don't know. That's it's feel I feels like a cheat because it's an animated movie, but it's like the emotion behind it. Like they make the food legitimately look great too, but
Mhm.
that just I think everybody's had that unlocking of a food memory, and it's really relatable. All right, let's see what else we have here. Um, the last two essentially are food movies, start to finish. So if you want, I'll just kind of mention them because you could cherry pick any scene from um, Big Night. It's Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub, Ian Holm, Isabella Rossellini. There's so many people in that movie that are known actors now that you're like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, these guys are so young here.
If you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Moish
Oh yeah, I
is
haven't
in
seen
that
that.
too. Yeah.
Who else? Oh, Jennifer Lopez's ex-husband. What's his name? Anthony. I can't remember his name now. He's their
Yeah,
like
I
a little
know.
assistant.
Mhm.
And so Big Night is two brothers, Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub, and they are Italians, first generation Italians. They came over from the old country and they came to America in the 1950s to make an authentic Italian restaurant. That's not doing so good because people aren't ready for that yet.
Mhm.
And they are constantly fighting between the older brother who wants to do it traditional and the younger brother, Stanley Tucci, who wants to do things that are going to be crowd pleasers and maybe serve hot dogs sometimes because that's what people want in Venice Beach in the 1950s. And so there's this old world versus new world, and being true to your roots and wavering to that. And they can't really come up to an agreement. So essentially, the restaurant's going to close, and the entire movie is building up to one big night that they're going to cook a feast for all their friends and family before they leave, and they're going to invite some recording artist that everybody loves to come and sit at the head of the table and be the special guest. And that the scene, there's a number of great scenes, and there's one scene where the two brothers are fighting like brothers do, and while they're fighting, at the tail end of the conversation, Stanley Tucci just picks up a frying pan and they're in a kitchen and fighting, and he whips up a couple of eggs for the two of them, and he whips them up real quick, divvies them out, and they stop and eat together and then go off their separate ways. And it's like two brothers reuniting for just a moment, eat some nice eggs, and then they go off on their way. It's really fast. But then the last probably 15 minutes of the movie is just this nonstop barrage of delicious food, dish after dish after dish after dish, and they're constantly serving it to these people, and it culminates in a dish called I always have to reference what it's called because I've never heard of it before. It's Timpano.
Yeah, and I was looking it up. That's actually, hold on.
Sure.
I thought I had a note for this. They were saying they called it Timpano.
Timpano.
I'm not butchering that, but it's something else.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's almost like a pasta mold almost.
Yeah.
It's like a cake they pack with pasta, and then they bake it upright, and then they have to flip the dish over, and then hopefully it releases, and you have this nice. I think it's got a crust on the inside too. So they line the deep cake dish with crust, and then pack it full of layers, like almost like a lasagna, and then they flip it over and have to shake it out of the dish, and you cut it in slices like a cake. But there's a very tense moment when they're releasing the timpano.
Yes.
And they're all freaking out, and
I recognize that to my core.
Yeah.
Because there was one time, I was learning how to make cakes at home with my mom. Actually, I just took it on myself to make a cake. I don't think, I was trying to sneak and kind of do it without her knowing. And then it was time to kind of like turn it out, and it was stuck. So my dad, he's always ever the supporter. He comes up and he's like trying to help me out. He sees I'm like about to cry because I forgot to grease this pan.
Oh boy.
And all my hard work is stuck on the inside of this pan.
Sure.
And so he's trying to kind of help me and talk me through it. He doesn't really know either. And so we're just kind of standing over this cake, and it finally releases, falls, and cracks.
Oh.
And I'm just like, and so my mom comes and just like, oh, what happened? And then she kind of, I don't know how she did it. She kind of glued it back together without gluing it back together. And I'm like, how did you do that? And so when they're waiting for it to release, and also when they're kind of checking it, but you can tell they can't take a cut out of it before presenting it at the table. And it's kind of this tension there. And I'm like, I recognize that. And it was why I had a baking business for a brief period. And it's why I never wanted to sell whole cakes, because I'm like, you can't make sure that you can't pull off one. Like if you make it individual and taste it for like quality assurance, you have to send it out without knowing what people are cutting into. And I was just like, I recognize that. I was just like, I felt the tension there.
It's a familiar feeling.
Yes.
And then when they do serve it out too, they have their rival who's played by Ian Holm, who's most famously known, I think, now as Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit. And he says, "It's so effing good, I should kill you." And then he kisses him on the mouth, and he's like, "I love it." It's another one of those, like the guy from Ratatouille.
Yeah.
He doesn't want him to succeed, but gosh, it's so good.
Yes, and the people, the actors eating it in the scene definitely sell it because they're just like, So,
Yeah, that movie's great. Most of these movies too, uh, Jiro Dreams of Sushi, Babette or Big Night, and then Babette's Feast was is the last one I'm going to talk about. They're all available on Kanopy.
okay.
It's a movie streaming service that's set up through your library, and
Mm,
it's free, 100% free. So if you have a library card, listeners, and you haven't taken advantage of this, and you're a movie fan, they basically they almost exclusively have movies that you're going to learn something from on there.
mm.
Um, important movies, more or less. That's kind of how they like market it. And you get 10 free watches a month. I've never maxed mine out because
So Canopy, Canopy.
it's a it's a Canopy with a K. It's
Canopy.
Kanopy. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you go to their website, and not every library participates with it, I had to go about 40 miles north of here to Lincoln, where my sister lives, and sign up for a library card there. But once you get it, you just put your library card information in, and you get this free service. It's
Mm.
awesome. So you want to do the last one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Ready.
Final movies, food movie scene. And this is again another movie where I can't pick one scene from this. It's the entire third act of Babette's Feast. And Babette's Feast is, I think, a Danish movie from 1987, and it is one of the most loving. It's like the greatest love letter to fancy food that I've ever seen.
Mm,
And Babette is a woman who fled from France. She was a renowned chef in France, and you don't know this till the very end when she starts cooking this giant feast. And she fled through. There was a political unrest there, and uncertainty and danger, and she had nowhere to go. All her family and friends were gone, and she went to this tiny town in Denmark. And these little old biddies took her in and allowed her to stay there because they knew a mutual friend or something. And she basically became their housemaid, cooked and cleaned. It did all this stuff, and they taught her all these Danish recipes that were disgusting, like bread, ale stew, just a big loaf of brown bread and a bunch of bottles of old beer they had
oh
mixed
my
together
gosh.
into a slop. And that was like what they were used to eating,
Mm,
and like local fish, whatever they could catch off the coast, because it was like right on the coast. And so the first 2/3 of the movie is about the relationship with the people and the townspeople and Babette and her learning to cook. And she's this bright point of light in their dour town.
mm,
Um, and they're a very strong religious town, and they believe they shouldn't enjoy anything because that
mm,
takes away from the glory of God. And at the very end, she wins a sum of money, and she's like got enough money where she's going to move home. And she asks if she can cook a feast for the entire town, which is only like 20 people.
mm,
And so she orders all her ingredients from France, has it
mm,
delivered to this tiny town in Denmark, and it's like um, live quail and
mm,
pheasants and a boar's head and all the quail eggs and all the fanciest French cuisine you can imagine, truffles and truffles and truffles, bottles of champagne from the 1700s, like really going all out. And you're like, holy moly, she's making quite the feast.
mhm,
And the townspeople realize that she's about to serve them alcohol and decadent food, and they realize that that's going to essentially cause them to sin. So
mm,
they all get together and they have this all these old people in the church, and they say, if we don't enjoy it, it won't be a sin. So
mm.
they agree to not say one good word about it for the entire feast, which
Oh,
is
wow.
heartbreaking because you love Babette and you want her to her joy to be spread throughout the town. And she's cooking and dropping off food and cooking and dropping off food and cooking and dropping off food. And she doesn't even sit around to hear the reaction from these people. And they can't help but love it. The
Mm,
first course and the second course and the third course, and they just grow with more and more love and admiration for it. And they're like, I can't believe this is so good. It's so good. And there's one person who is not from the town. He's their special guest that was the mutual friend of all of them. He's a general of the Swedish army. He
mm,
comes in with his full, giant, colorful regalia and the big feathered hat and stuff. And he's telling them how much they should enjoy this food because he's like, I've only ever had quail eggs this good any one place, and it was in Paris.
mm,
And this champagne, this is the most delicious champagne I've ever had. I can't believe it's a 1780, whatever, blah blah blah.
mhm,
and he's rubbing off on all of them slowly. And as they drink more and eat more, by the end they're telling stories and loving each other and confessing to hurting each other's feelings years past and all this stuff. And Babette the entire time is in the kitchen slaving away, and she doesn't even care.
Mm,
She knows what she's giving to them, and she's giving them basically everything that she has. All of her training and her life's work is going into that meal. And you realize at the end that whole $10,000 that she won from this through this lottery all went into the one meal, and
oh wow.
she gave it all back to the town because she has nowhere to go and she doesn't plan on leaving. But
Mm,
she wanted to do that one time, and it's to me that movie is like it's giving the biggest piece of yourself to the people that you love,
mhm.
and it's shown in such a beautiful way in Babette's Feast. But that entire third act, you could cherry pick a 45-second segment of that, and it's my favorite food scene of any of for the next 30 minutes. You know, it's nonstop. It's so gorgeous.
I always love watching chefs like in the zone, especially when they're doing like big multiple dish feasts. The way
Mm,
they're just kind of effortlessly effortlessly juggling all of that work, and also not just juggling work, because you multitask at an office job all day,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's the heart and the passion behind it while they're cooking as well. It's kind of like a dance. It's like watching a good dancer or a fantastic singer.
You would love that last act. Then it's watching her in the kitchen is just as enjoyable as watching the people enjoy the food.
Hmm.
And she's got one little helper, her cousin, her nephew, or something like that, who she brought in from the mainland. And she's like, "You need to pluck the chickens, and you need to do this." And his glass is empty. Go out there and make sure he's got a full glass all the time, and then leave the bottle with them, the general. And like she's orchestrating the night from the kitchen, and she'll poke her head out to drop some food off, and then come back. But she doesn't
Hmm.
linger and go, "Oh, I hope you guys like the food."
Hmm.
She
Yeah,
knows she's giving
I would be
everything.
staring. I would probably appear from under the table like, "Are you enjoying your food?"
I know. Another quail egg, madame. Yeah, it's weird. It's too weird too because a lot of those dishes I've never seen before,
Yeah,
and
like
I
the I think it was the quail and the puff pastry, the
oh
whole
yes,
quail and the puff pastry. Yeah,
yep, never seen that, and the way they eat it is maybe a little off-putting to modern audiences, but I think this
yeah.
is set in the 30s, I think, or
Mm.
maybe even earlier than that. It's a I just seen this movie just this year, and it's become one of my favorites.
It's a lot of ASMR chewing going on.
Yes, yes. So yeah, I really hope that the people listening at least come away with a few recommendations for movies they may never heard of before. Big Night, Babette's Feast. Those are kind of not contemporary movies that get talked about often, and they're
Mhm.
start to finish
I,
fantastic
I
food
love
movies.
Stanley Tucci, so I'm definitely going to be checking out Big Night. I hadn't
Oh,
watched that before.
he's glorious in that movie.
Yes.
Glorious. I love Tucci. Um, but yeah, that's my list.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Oh, we're going to talk about Studio Ghibli.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
that's a uh, Studio Ghibli's like a perennial all time champion of food and movies.
Hmm.
Um, his what is the his name the founder behind Studio Ghibli? I can't remember. But he's
Is it Miyazaki? Is that?
Miyazaki. That's it. Yeah,
Yes.
Miyazaki. And almost every movie that they have doesn't matter how lighthearted and fancy free or depressing their movie is, they always show people cooking food in a way that is like very earnest, very honest. They show, sometimes in cartoons it's like maybe they're not going to show the prep work and the raw ingredients and stuff,
Hmm.
and they don't show the actual preparation of the food. But in Miyazaki movies and Studio Ghibli, it is, you see everything,
Hmm.
basket full of raw ingredients, the chopping and the boiling water, and then the enjoyment of the people. It's really something.
Yeah, and his movies are always so relaxing in a way. Like
Yes.
you sit down, you really escape because you
Mhm.
sit down and it's like you're taking away, and it's something, they say that ASMR relaxes you. It's kind of almost like that in a way, but visually,
Mhm.
to where it just kind of hits all the right buttons, and it's like instant calm. So that plus food preparation is like a recipe for like just just I don't know, zen. Like it's just a
That's a
good,
good way to put it,
yeah.
Zen. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're ever if you're ever just looking for some really relaxing background music, you
Hmm.
can just tell your Alexa, just, hey Alexa, play Studio Ghibli music.
I'm going to do that.
And yeah,
I hadn't thought about that, but I'm definitely going to do that.
there's YouTube mixes. There's like lo-fi Studio Ghibli. There's Studio Ghibli relaxing sounds,
Mm,
and you can there's people make these playlists, but if you just take the music straight from the movies, they're just as good.
hmm.
But yeah, we listen to a lot of that in our house too. I haven't seen all of his stuff, but everything that I've seen has been very relaxing, very zen. And the food always hits right.
Yeah. And it's always like realistic. What kind of reminded me of that is that scene in Turning Red,
Mhm.
where Mei Mei's father is cooking, and
Oh, the dumplings.
it's funny because this is pretty like a high energy, typical, almost kind of a mesh between East and West in terms of
Uh,
animation. And so it's very high energy. And for this scene where the dad is like taking away and he's almost in like his artistic happy place,
mhm.
kind of like what we saw in Soul. He's in
Yeah.
that realm, and he's cooking, and it's like the music slows down and you have like a brief little like Studio Ghibli moment in that
Mhm.
film, which I thought was really like interesting.
Yeah, I like that. And I also like when she's making the dumplings and she like throws it to her dad and he's like, "It's a good dumpling."
Yes, and
And
she's
he's
she's
like,
waiting
"Yes."
on the approval in her face too. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
know. It is good.
I see we have a special guest there in the back.
Yeah, it's my Great Dane. Yeah.
Oh,
Hi, Nova.
nice.
Okay, lay down. Lay down.
You're just like, okay, you've been at this an hour.
I know. Yeah, if I were to give like a special mentions, there's a couple other food movies that didn't make the list, but are just great food movies in general. We have Chef, uh, it's basically about a guy he's a classically trained chef and he gets a food truck and starts doing his own thing.
Mm,
Um, he's John Favreau wrote
mhm.
it, directed it, starred in it. And then Boiling Point is a movie that just came out last year.
Yes, I wanted to see that. I haven't seen
Oh
it
my
yet.
god, it's very tense. It's more about a restaurant than food because they don't show a lot of the food cooking. But it's a little bit of a hard watch. It's shot like a
Mm,
one take. There's no edits, no cuts, no nothing. And they really did shoot the movie, a 90-minute movie in one shot.
oh
No,
wow.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
everybody's ready. It's very good. And then I think those are the two big ones that kind of missed my list that I think people would probably why not Chef? Oh, and Burnt. Burnt is a Bradley
Mm.
Cooper movie where he plays a chef with a anger problem and can't keep a job. That was pretty good too. Not as good as I think Chef was very fun watch with Chef.
Mm.
So that's everything I
Yes.
got.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I really enjoyed talking with you about food and movies. So if someone wants to check out one of your podcasts, where would they go?
You can look up Middle Class Film Class anywhere that you're listening to this podcast, anywhere you find any pod chaser and Spotify and Apple and Ghana and all the funky ones that you never heard of before. We're on those too. And we release our news and review, which we call Gab and Chatter. That's every Monday, and then our deep dive review is every Wednesday. So, and we're really strong on listener interaction. So if you listen and you like it or you don't like it, send us an email. We'll read it on air. We interact with our listeners quite a bit.
Okay, awesome.
And I had a blast, by the way. This was really fun. Sorry
Oh,
for sorry
awesome,
for going
awesome,
so long.
awesome.
Once I get going, it's
No
hard to stop.
worries. I'm not going to stop a good thing. I'm not going to cut
Yeah.
off a good thing. So,
That was
yes.
wonderful. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'm Jess, the Flaky Foodie. If you enjoyed this episode, treat it like gossip or the gospel and tell somebody about it. Uh, New episodes every Wednesday. All the info about our guests and about the show and where you can find us on social media is in our show notes. And have a great week, everybody. Eat something delicious. And if you do, tell me about it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks. Have a great evening.